The medieval builder's secret survival skills. Introduction: Survival in stone. Imagine standing in front of a towering Gothic cathedral, its spires reaching skyward like fingers of stone clawing toward the heavens. The intricacy of its carvings, the precision of its arches, the weight of the centuries built into every wall, all this created without modern machines, without engines, without electricity. Now close your eyes and try to picture the hands that shaped it. They were calloused, weathered, strong, but not just in muscle. These were hands trained through endless repetition, guided by unwritten knowledge passed from master to apprentice. They belonged to builders who could read the land like a map, who knew the weight of a stone by touch, and who understood the cycles of seasons not from books, but from years lived in harmony with nature. Medieval builders were more than craftsmen. They were survivalists. They endured brutal winters, political chaos, outbreaks of disease, and the ever-present danger of collapse. Yet what they built not only endured, it became the foundation of cities, of kingdoms, of civilization itself. In this deep exploration, we'll journey into their world, not just the buildings they left behind, but the skills, mindsets, and resourcefulness that allowed them to thrive against the odds. Through stone and timber, sweat and patience, they carved a legacy of survival that still surrounds us today. Chapter 1. More than just builders. When we imagine medieval life, we often focus on knights, kings, and battles. But the medieval world wasn't built on war, it was built by the hands of laborers, craftsmen, and especially builders. And yet, their names are mostly forgotten. Builders weren't merely hired labor. In many ways, they were visionaries and engineers responsible not only for executing plans but often for creating them. Especially in smaller towns and abbeys, there might be no detailed blueprint, no master architect from a university. Instead, the builders themselves would take the patron's vision, a larger church, a stronger keep, a taller bell tower, and turn it into reality. To do so, they had to understand a vast array of disciplines: geometry, physics, materials science, even if they didn't call it that, weather patterns, and, most importantly, people. Organizing a medieval building site meant more than managing tools, it meant managing men, animals, supplies, and time in a world without clocks or standardized systems. In essence, the medieval builder was part mason, part carpenter, part foreman, and part survivalist. Because life on a construction site wasn't easy. These weren't modern, regulated zones with safety gear and insurance. These were rough, temporary encampments where every mistake could cost a limb or a life. Stone blocks weighing hundreds of kilos had to be lifted by human power and clever mechanical leverage. Scaffolding creaked. Lime dust choked the lungs. Weather changed without warning. And yet they built cathedrals, castles, bridges, farmhouses, granaries, city walls. The very infrastructure that still anchors Europe today. Chapter 2. Building with nature's bounty. One of the most profound aspects of medieval construction was how deeply it was tied to the land itself. Builders didn't import, they adapted. They didn't fight nature, they collaborated with it. Stone, the bones of the earth. Stone was prized not just for its strength, but for its permanence. Roman ruins still stood across Europe, and medieval builders sought to emulate and surpass them. Quarrying stone was grueling, dangerous work, but builders knew the characteristics of each type intimately. Limestone was soft when freshly quarried but hardened over time, perfect for carving and decorative work. Granite, though difficult to cut, was used for foundations and defensive structures due to its hardness. Sandstone offered a balance between strength and workability. They didn't choose stone based on appearance alone. They considered its porosity, how it responded to freezing and thawing, how it aged when exposed to wind and rain. Builders placed different stones in different parts of a structure depending on stress loads, water exposure, and aesthetic function. Timber, living material. If stone was the bone, timber was the sinew. Builders used timber not just for roofs and floors, but for scaffolding, lifting devices, and even temporary housing. They practiced what we now call green woodworking, using freshly felled trees while the wood still had high moisture content. This made the wood more pliable, especially valuable for curved elements like arches, braces, and ribbed vaults. Oak, chestnut, ash, and elm were prized hardwoods. Pine and fir were used for less critical structures. Builders also recognized how long timber needed to season before being structurally stable, sometimes waiting months or even years before using a beam. Clay, earth, and lime, the binding agents. Builders weren't above using what others might call dirt. Clay was shaped into bricks, tiles, and earthen walls. Mixed with straw, it became wattle and daub, an insulation method still used in some rural houses today. Lime was perhaps their most important chemical ally. By burning limestone at high temperatures and then mixing the resulting quicklime with water and sand, they produced lime mortar, a binder that hardened slowly, allowing flexibility but ultimately set into rock. Modern concrete is faster, but it's also brittle. Lime mortar allowed medieval structures to breathe and move with time, which is part of why so many have survived earthquakes, storms, and centuries of change. Water, life and threat. Water was both tool and danger. Builders needed it for mixing mortar, soaking clay, and cooling tools, but they also feared it. Uncontrolled water could erode foundations, rot wood, and spread disease. Thus, many buildings were designed with integrated water management, gutters carved into stone, downspouts made from lead or clay, and elevated floors with drainage channels below. Even before the word hygiene was common, medieval builders understood that dry meant safe and wet meant death.